All right. We're at time, so I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to cross-platform open source monitoring and reporting. This was a heavy competition hour, so I appreciate you dedicating your time to my talk here. So I appreciate that. I am JD Strong. I'm a client platform engineer and community advocate for Fleet. I've been a Mac admin for 20 plus years. And a consultant. In the before times, I was an Apple reseller and service provider. That was a bad marriage that I finally got out of, and went back to working for the man. And I've been a sourdough bread baker for probably a decade now, well before the pandemic. So, for a random fact about me, obligatory pan photo very quickly. So there you go. Thank you. I did not bring bread to hand out. It would be soggy at this point with all the rain that we've had, so that would not go over well. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about the stack that I'm using here, explore Fleet and OS Query a little bit, and explore how we create policies using Fleet and OS Query. And then build a low-code workflow for that, and hopefully close some tickets at the end of it. So first, a quick survey, show of hands. Who's used Fleet before and OS Query? Hopefully it's the same people that were raising their Fleet hands. So, anybody use Collide? Okay. And has anybody used any low-code platforms, Okta workflows, if this then that, things like that? All right, perfect. Ticketing systems, Zendesk, OSTicket, Jira. Who loves their ticketing system? Yeah, see, nobody. Freshdesk? Well, hopefully we can help with that in showing you some of the low-code stuff that I'm able to do, and maybe that'll be inspiration for you to automate your ticketing system and just automatically close tickets on people because, whatever. So the stack here is Fleet with OS Query. So Fleet is, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but Fleet is an interface for OS Query. And with that, I tie into a low-code platform that's open source called N8N. And then my goal here was to push that into OSTicket, which is another open source ticketing system. There's lots of ticketing systems out there that this will work with. So first, for those who don't know what OS Query is, it's an open source cross-platform agent that gets installed, very lightweight on all of your devices. And it essentially turns your entire fleet of computers into a giant database. And so you have tables of information that you can then ask questions against. For example, how many computers are not up to date and also don't have enough free space on the hard drive to even download the update for that? Who has unencrypted SSH keys? What items are running on boot? What other users are on the machine outside of your local admin and your primary user for that? Those are the types of questions you can ask with OS Query, and you can get very deep into this for compliance needs and things like that. So you can really dig deep into everything that's going on the computers for that. So with Fleet, we are a front end for that brings to the table a full REST API and the ability to do live queries and schedule those live queries for that. We also bring the ability to stream all this data into your favorite SIM or data logger for that. So if it's Splunk or what have you, something like that. And then with the REST API and the webhooks, we're able to really take action and investigate what's going on using the combination of that and OS Query. And a couple of months ago, we introduced our MDM solution. And you can use Fleet with or without the MDM. The MDM portion of this gives you the ability to have declarative device management before Apple actually has rolled out declarative device management, because we have OS Query running. So when you push a profile out there, you can actually verify with OS Query that it has actually taken place and those settings have been made on the machine. But again, you don't have to use the MDM portion of it. You can just use this for the OS Query. And that's really what we're going to focus on today is the OS Query part of this. So what is N8N? This is a really cool open source project that's been in the works here. I tripped over it accidentally probably about a year ago as I was looking for something that wasn't going to charge me $20 a month. Granted, I'm paying that to DigitalOcean, but at least I have control over the data that way. And it's not alcohol, it's just iced coffee. As far as you know. So this is a low-code, no-code environment, very much like If This and That, Make.com, Tines, other platforms like that. The cool thing about this is because it's open source and so many people have flocked to it, even if you've never heard of it before, there's over 395 integrations and growing with this. So that ability to extend it, what you're able to do without having to go dig through the API and figure out how to make a call to whatever platform you're working with is really, really nice. And what I like about this is I can self-host it. And it was pretty easy to get started. Docker Compose, and I was up and running in just a few minutes. And then OSTicket. So this is an open source ticketing system. It's like every other ticketing system that you've ever used and hated. The difference here is it's open source, so you can change it, whereas a lot of the other ticketing systems, you may not be able to. And it has integrations with email, CRM, et cetera, and scales, and it's used all over the place. So this was my stack: Fleet, OS Query, N8N, OSTicket. Here's my talk. This is what I want to talk about. The problem, so really, the automation tool can be whatever you want it to be. So it could be N8N, Tines, Make.com, Okta Workflows, StackStorm, another open source project. If This Then That, Zapier. I don't care. What we're talking about here can be done on any of these types of automation tools. I'm just focused on an open source because Fleet is open source. I wanted to focus on an open source solution for this. So that also comes to our reporting platform. So my example here is OSTicket. Could use Zendesk, Jira, Freshdesk. Could be sending stuff to Slack, PagerDuty, Mailjet, SMS, what have you. And I really wanted to do this with OSTicket, but, and it's completely open source, and I really wanted to keep this all open source, but I ended up opting for the devil that I know, and that's Zendesk. And then I was looking at this further, and why not just send it to email and Slack? Who actually looks at their ticketing system anymore? We just want a Slack ping, right? Ye who dies with the most Slack pings wins. No. But what I'm going to show you today, really where you send the notification doesn't matter, whether that goes to something like Zendesk or a ticketing system, email, Slack, or whatever notification tool you want. This will all work with that. So to get started, this is not a workshop, but if you want to play with Fleet, we do have a demo environment. It does require Docker. You can download it from fleetdm.com/fleetcontrol-preview, or just download Fleet Control from our releases page on GitHub. With that, you can set up the preview. The command at the command line is just Fleet Control Preview. What this will do is spin up a quick instance of Fleet in Docker and give you a couple of example servers that are running OS Query, and also enroll your local for that, and gives you a chance to play with Fleet. It'll bring up the web UI, and you can really go to town on that very quickly. This isn't like something you can really roll out there and use, but if you just want to play with Fleet really quickly, this is a great way to do that. And then just for reference, I know a couple of folks have taken pictures of the slides here. Fleet control preview reset will destroy the environment for you and clean everything up. I've had a couple instances where I've told people about Fleet control preview and then don't tell them how to get out of it. And they're like, how do I kill this thing? Well, that's how. And then my last little thing here about Fleet in the community is we do have an OS Query Slack, and we're on the OS Query Slack rather, and the Mac Admin Slack in the Fleet channels on both of those. So please, if you have questions, concerns, join us, make pull requests. It is an open source project, and you can see everything that we are doing because we're doing it out in the open. We're not ashamed. But first, let's do a quick tour of Fleet for those who may not know it. When you first log in to Fleet, you get your Fleet dashboard. And here we have a summary of all the enrolled hosts, macOS, Windows, Linux, and Chrome OS or Chromebooks. We'll see missing hosts that haven't reported in, hosts that have low disk space, so we can quickly get to those and see what's going on. For that, oops, I have highlights animation. So that's the hosts here, and then the missing hosts and low disk space for that. And then beneath that, we have a full software inventory. So not only do you have a software inventory per machine, but you can actually look at your entire fleet for that. And then also see any activity, folks who are logging in, running live queries and things like that. So full transparency for that. And then, let's see. The other thing that I like to point out is with Fleet Premium, we have this concept of teams, and that allows you to just segment all of your devices into a variety of groups. With that, you can apply different policies to different teams. So you may have conference room machines or lab machines that you may not care as much about, whether or not they're hitting CIS compliance policies. You can segment those out for that with teams. All right, so moving on, when you click into a host, did I do this right? Sorry, I'm moving ahead here. When you click into hosts, you're going to get basic information about the machine, device status, disk space, operating system. All of these columns can be customized in here, so you can also filter beyond this, so you can really kind of dive deep. And we haven't even hit OS Query or writing any SQL, right? This is just all the UI here. And clicking into a machine gives you a nice detail view. Just a ton of information about any potential macOS update changes that need to happen, disk space, encryption status, memory, public and private IP address, serial numbers, things like that. You can also see full software inventory again, and any policies that might be failing for them, so you can address that. On the Controls tab, this is really where our MDM setup happens here. So you can set a minimum OS version, and the open source version of this does have full MDM capabilities if you want to add your APNS certificates to it and SCEP. The only thing you won't get with that is ADE for the MDM part of that. On the software tab, again, full software inventory. Here you can see how many folks have various versions of whatever software. So this is helpful if there's a potential version of a piece of software that might have a vulnerability. You can go digging into this and find which devices in your fleet have that potential vulnerable piece of software and go after them and hit them with a hammer or remove it. You guys aren't a I'm trying to do a song and dance up here for you. So, kidding. It was a long night. There was a lot of rain last night, so I understand. So the next tab there is queries. And these are, what you're seeing here are saved queries. You can also build your own queries here. And it's pretty easy to do. You just, when you're in queries, hit create new query. By default, we're going to give you select star from OS query info, and then select which host you want to run that on, and then hit the go button. And within 10 seconds, you'll start seeing reports back from however many hosts that you selected for that. So that depending on the query that you write, we may warn you that that's going to be a little intensive. Are you sure you want to do that? But for the most part, within less than a minute, all of your hosts will report back to you anything that's online and give you answers to those questions. The other thing in here, well, I didn't give you a screenshot for it. When you are writing that query, we do give you all the table schema along on the sidebar there. So it's really easy to go find tables and what data points are in the tables to help you build those queries. On the schedule tab, this is where we can schedule queries that you can then use to ship off to your favorite logging destination, such as S3, Snowflake, Elastic, Splunk, Graylog, etc. for that. So this is especially for compliance needs where you need to capture this on a regular basis. You can schedule these queries and they'll just run automatically for you. And then finally, policies. Policies allows us to have set requirements for devices. We, by default, give you a lot of these. And then with the paid version, add in things like CIS benchmarks as part of that. CIS charges us money. We have to charge you money to use it. Sorry. But you can also roll your own for that. But we do give you a lot out of the box here. So this is actually what we're going to focus on today is the policies aspect of this. And part of that is because policies will throw a webhook, or can call a webhook rather. So this allows us to take action when somebody fails a policy for that. But before we get into that, one last thing I'd like to point out is we have the option of installing what we call Fleet Desktop. So this is a little menu icon that gets added to the device. And again, we believe in full transparency. So users can go to this menu, select My Device, and they're going to get a summary screen very similar to what you can see when you click through to a machine or a device in the full Fleet UI, and see all of the information that's being collected on their machine. So again, full transparency. You don't have to enable this, but it is an option for you. So who's familiar with SQL or SQL? All right. This is a little bit of an overview for folks who have not seen SQL before. I apologize to all of you who are just like, yeah, SQL, I understand. So the basic construct for SQL is you're selecting you're picking what columns you want to select out of a table. You're saying from which table, and then you can add conditions to that. So the basics is select star would select everything from a particular table, and then you can add different conditions such as where. So for the example here, select a username from users, and you could say where user ID equals 501. That would give you most likely the primary admin on a Mac for that. You can the order by allows you to basically sort those columns. So you can order by the various columns that you've selected. And then you can also combine tables and join them on indices, and that's what the join command will do for you. So speaking of tables, like I said, there's over 300 plus tables available in OS Query for you, and we're going to go over each and every single one of these. No. And this slide used to build faster, but there you go. Oh, there's one more column. There's a lot of tables. There's a lot of data. This is one of the things that really drew me to OSQuery is just how much data is available. In my former SaaS gig, which was also a monitoring tool, everything that we did there was artisanally handcrafted. So you had to write a bash script or a Python script to go and grab the details off the device. And here, the OSQuery community is just amazing and has written a lot of this and has added things like the MacAdmins tables, and those give you access to things like Monkey and insights into a whole bunch of other things on the Mac. And all of these are here for you to explore. And the community is great. The Slack channel, there's always folks in there that if you're struggling to figure out how to ask a certain question or build that query, they will get in there and help you. And a lot of them are actually on the Fleet team as well. So for columns, here's a good example of what this looks like for the data attributes that we're showing you on the query builder. So for a column, you have the column, the type, so that's integer or text, most likely, and then a description of what the data is that's stored in that column for a particular table. And then we'll try and give you an example. I found in doing this, I had to make a couple of PRs because we actually had bad examples in our code, so, I had to fix a few things along the way. But we will try and also give you a basic example of how to use that particular table. So this is the running apps table as an example. It has a PID, so that's the process ID, and the bundle identifier of the app that's running. So really only 2 columns are available here. But that PID is an integer, so that means, and it's indexed, so that means that, actually both of these are indexed. The bundle identifier is indexed as well. So we can use that in conjunction with other tables to go find out more. So here's the process ID of this application that's running. Where is that application located? And we can use the files table to dig a little deeper into that and ask those questions. You don't have to pick everything, and sometimes you want more conciseness, so you can select just the columns that you want from the table. You can add in a where statement to further restrict the data that you're asking for, and you can also use wildcards. So the %sign on either side of a string statement will match any sequence. So it's helpful for file paths. If you want to look into all the user directories, you can say users / %sign / the downloads folder, for example. And underscore will match a single character. So if we wanted to look at things from the processes table, you can select star from processes, and this will give you a snapshot of what's happening on that computer right now. And then I use this example a little bit here, but select star from users where UID 501. So this would be helpful if you wanted to find out who is generally the admin, or which account is the primary admin on all of your Mac computers, because 501 is the user ID that's generally assigned by Apple's setup when you first set up your machine. The other cool thing I really like with OSQuery is the ability to dig into Chrome extensions. These can be potential threats these days, so being able to see Chrome extensions that are installed, joining that with the users table and Chrome extensions, and then using the user ID to make that connection. We can see who has what Chrome extension and who's running that. Another example here is Drivespace. So with this, we're looking at blocks available and doing some math. Who knew that we'd have to do math these days? But the cool thing about this is that SQLite, which is what this is, will do the math for you. So we're basically figuring out how many blocks are available in the block size, multiplying that and then rounding it to get the number of gigabytes free on that. And then, so we're saying we do that round blocks available block size to, and then the as free underscore GB. So what we're saying is take this math equation and give the column name free underscore GB. And then the next value that we have, the round blocks available, times 1 divided by blocks times 1 times 100, rounded to 2 as free percent. So we're just calculating the free percentage on the drive, and we're calling that column free underscore PC. We're doing this from the mounts table, and we're looking at the path of slash. So we're looking at the whole root drive on that. Other tables that are handy here that I like to point out are events tables. So there's file events for macOS and Linux, NTFS journal events for Windows, PowerShell events also for Windows, process events for macOS and Linux, and socket events for macOS and Linux. So this is really helpful for threat detection and figuring out what's going on with the machine. So, which I have on the next slide here. File integrity monitoring as well can be found with the file events and NTFS journal mounts. Huge thing is tracking USB storage, and USB drives may be being connected to a drive if you don't want USB. You don't want data walking out in somebody's pocket. This is a good way to see if somebody is actually connected to a USB drive for that. The thing I like to point out here is that Fleet is not storing all of the OS query data. It is a snapshot in time for this. If you want to store all of that data, you need to push that into a SIM and ingest it somewhere else for that. So we have a lot of log destinations for that. But when you're in the UI, it is simply a point in time, and generally the most current point in time that you're looking at for the device.
Just to clarify that, so that means what Fleet's doing is pulling the data as you ask for it, but that data is that stored on the machine then? It's pulling from the machine, or is it being pulled from a database that's stored somewhere else? So
just to repeat, the question is the data stored on the machine, or is it being stored elsewhere? The data is so the way this works is once an hour, generally, the machine will check in and provide a payload of data to the server, which the server will store. When you do a live query, that actually calls out to the endpoint to actually run that query at that time and then send that data back for that. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see, other stuff here. We're going to spend most of the time looking at basically the UI for this, the web UI, but we do have a full CLI. Again, Fleet was written from the ground up to be available through a REST API and through a command line interface first and foremost. So unlike a lot of other products out there, I feel like our API is not bolted on because all of our UI stuff calls the API to get its job done. So it feels a lot more natural as an API. To use Fleet CTL or Fleet Control is our command line tool for that. You do have to do a few things, and this is if you're running the preview environment, you would do a Fleet Control config set the address to your local host. Port 1337 because you're elite. If you don't understand that, come see me afterwards. And then we don't care about security on the preview, so we're just gonna skip the verify on the TLS for that. And then at that point, you can do a Fleet Control login and actually log into that environment using the admin credentials, adminexample.com, and the Fleet Elite login for that. To get into that. So if you do want to play with the command line, that's how you can do that with the preview as well. So you're probably asking, how do I get hosts into Fleet? So you've talked about all this magic, and I'm excited, and I want to put this out there. So the next step for you is actually to add hosts. And from the host page, you can click Add Hosts. And also from the command line, you can create a package. The add host is actually going to give you the command line statement. This will create an unsigned package for you. And we also give you the commands for Mac, not just for Mac OS, but Windows, Linux, and to build your Chrome OS extension as well for that. So this is how you can do it from the command line. Again, that's an unsigned package. So Apple's super secret tip is right-click Open to install that without having to be prompted that it's from an unverified person. But if you feel like signing it, go right ahead. I promise you it's safe. No, it's safe. So a little bit more about the command line. For the most part, all of the configuration can be done in YAML because we love linting YAML. But I like YAML because it's easier to read than plist, but that's just me. So you can create a configuration file. In this example, we're changing the webhook settings to an interval of 1 minute. Generally, the webhook is being called either once an hour or once a day, depending on what it is. And then you can use fleet control, apply, and then -F to pass the file of config YAML for that. I don't actually recommend doing this, but in a demo environment where you want things to happen really quickly, it's nice to have that webhook firing every minute instead of waiting an hour from when you last did that. So this is a workaround for that. But on a production system, don't do this. You'll DDoS yourself even more than you're already DDoSing yourself with OS Query and the heartbeat. So we set this to 1 minute instead of 24 hours. This is, like I said, helpful for putting together your CI/CD pipelines or GitOps workflows and testing that. But once you've done that, set that back, turn that back off, because you'll take your server down. All right, so back to the agenda. We've talked about Slack. We've explored Fleet a little bit. We've talked about OS Query. So now we're finally at the heart of, please hold while the slides finish building for me. Sorry, I'm talking faster than the slide. Now we're really at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish today, which is creating policies. So policies are queries that run in a pass-fail basis. And this feels counterintuitive, but basically, if it returns a result, it passes. So one of the ways we can do that is a little trick of what we say is select one. And this example is we're looking at the SIP configuration table. We're looking for the configuration flag SIP and to see if it's enabled. So we want to see if SIP is enabled. And if it is, basically it's going to return a 1 back as a result. Because we don't care what the results are. We know that it's going to match these two things, the config flag of SIP and that it's enabled, so just return a 1. We can also do this with Drivespace, and I'm going to dig a little deeper into this. So I gave you this example earlier to just go find what the available Drivespace is, right? We can find how many gigs are available or percentage is available. So we can rewrite this as a policy. And so the original statement is on the bottom, the new statement is on the top. So we're going to select 1 here. And instead of, because we don't care what the columns are, we don't need that to return back to us, right? We don't need that data. We just need to know if it's going to be, in this case, less than 100 gigs. So now we can take, we're going to look at the free gigabytes, and we're going to say where the path is / and, so we're putting conditions on this, and when we do all of this math, it ends up less than 100, which means less than 100 gigs. Right. And so with this, I now have a policy to say, alert me on any machine that has less than 100 gigs of free space. And you can put more, you can build more conditions into this. You can say, go look at the drive, and for every 2 terabyte drive, I want at least 100 gigs of free space. But maybe you have a 250 gig drive on a MacBook Air. 100 gigs of free space, that's a lot of free space on a MacBook Air. And you're going to punish yourself if you ask every time who has more than 100 gigs of free space on a MacBook Air. So you might put a condition. You can join other tables to look at model numbers and things like that to say either the drive is 250 gig drive, or it's a MacBook Air, or whatever the conditions may be, to also say, and this, this is the case. So it's a 250 gig drive, maybe I only want 50 gigs of free space, and throw a policy of failure here, or, to let us know that that's happening. So back in the UI, we can create this policy. I've called the policy less than 100 gigs of free space. I've given it a description. Now, the thing I like to point out here is that everything that we're putting into this policy here is visible to the user if you turn on the Fleet desktop menu. So the resolution here could be contact IT. Or my favorite here is go empty your trash, basically. Go turn on the automatic trash emptying service that Apple gives you. But the resolution can be visible to the user. And the nice thing about policies here is that maybe you can ease some of your pain by letting users see that they have something that they're failing. Maybe they can fix it themselves. We're still going to go through with the process of maybe opening a ticket, but then we can have some automation behind that to say, check in 24 hours. Oh, I see that they're no longer failing this policy. Let's go and automatically close that ticket. So some other examples of policies are full disk encryption being enabled, and we actually give these to you. They're already here. When you go to create a policy, it's in a drop-down list for you to pick. So we have examples of FDE for Linux, macOS, Windows. We're looking at the demo, or the preview environment here. You'll see that FDE doesn't get turned on for all the example Linux machines because there's 7 failing hosts there. But the Mac, hopefully you're local, you're running FileVault and you're encrypted. We can also check to see if the firewall is enabled, as an example. So the firewall for macOS is in the ALF table, and we can look for the global state of greater than or equal to 1. And then for Windows, they hide that in the Windows Security Center. And where the firewall is good. That's my favorite. Firewall is good. Other things we can look for here is unwanted software. And for this, we have a concept of negative policies. So that's, it gets a little crazy where we're saying where not exists. So we're looking for, maybe we don't want Discord on our machines. Because we actually want our employees to get stuff done during the day. But I would say take Slack off the machines personally. But so what we would do is we're looking in the apps table, and we're looking for anything that matches Discord. We're using the % signs around this, and the reason here is there's Discord Canary. There's a couple of different versions of Discord. They may try to rename it, things like that, so we can go look for that. If we find that, we're actually going to return 1. If we don't find that, this will return nothing, and they're passing the policy. It's backwards. I think I said that right? Yeah, if we find it, we'll return 1. If we don't find it, we won't return anything. There you go. English, it's a fun language. Someday I'll learn it. So adding policies. When you're in the Policies tab, simply click Add a Policy. When you do that, again, you get this drop-down list of policies. We're giving a lot of these to you by default. This is in the open source version of this, isn't paid. So you really don't have to go learn OS Query and SQL to get probably 80% of this in place and up and running. we're giving you all of these policies, and not just for macOS, for Windows, for Linux, for Chromebook as well. So the next step of this, we've created our policy, and now we want to manage our automations. So with automations, when you select Manage Automations, this screen will come up. You just turn on Policy Automations Enabled, and then you'll see the list of automation or policies that you've created. So here I've only enabled 2. The one we created with less than 100 gigs of free space and FDE for macOS. And then we have the option of a workflow. We can create a ticket or we can call a webhook. So we'll choose ticket for our workflow, right? This is going to be easy. We're going to send this right to Zendesk and we're going to be done. Oh, except we need to add an integration here. So let's back up a step, go to Settings, Integrations, Ticket Destinations, add an integration, and we'll go ahead and add Zendesk in here. For that, for Zendesk as an example, Jira is very similar, and those are the 2 by default that we support. You put your Zendesk URL in there, email for who you want this to come from, and your API token. Go ahead and try and use that API token, and a group ID. And that's all you need to add this integration. And once you're done, it'll show up as an integration in the list. You can have multiple destinations for this, but you can actually only send this to one destination at a time for that. So now we can go back into that, pick the Zendesk example that we have here from the dropdown, and we're good to go. But there's this thing, preview ticket. Oh, what's the ticket going to look like? So here's an example ticket. We have a policy here. The full disk encryption is failing, and here are the 2 hosts. Some people like getting a single ticket with multiple hosts, but I personally want a ticket per host because I normally have to deal with each individual user for that. So this is kind of a non-starter for me. So yeah, this failed on 2 host things means I have 1 ticket to manage 2 problems, or possibly 3 or 4 problems. That's just not going to work for me. So I prefer one ticket per incident. So how do we change this? Well, we're going to go back to our stack here. And again, we have lots of options of automation tools. We can use the built-in to send to Zendesk, to send to Jira, or we can use the webhook. So pick your poison here. I chose N8N, again, because it's free and open source, and it allows me to build a workflow like this. Now, this is an ideal workflow because that's a lot of noise that I'm creating for you. You're going to get a Zendesk ticket, you're going to get a Mailjet email, and you're going to get a Slack ping. And then you probably have Zendesk tied into Slack, so you're going to get 2 Slack pings, and you probably have Mailjet also tied into, so email coming in, it's going to go to another. You're going to get 3 Slack pings for 1 ticket. That's probably not a great idea, but really I wanted to show you what the possibilities of destinations can be. So for this, again, the reason I picked N8N is because they have over 395 integrations available. So we're going to use the webhook, and then we have all of these other integrations that we can work with. We can send this to Airtable if we want to build a database of problematic users. Or, I don't know, I'm trying to be funny here, but it's early. So there's a lot of destinations we can send that to. So let's go ahead and look at the webhook for this. So in N8N, and again, Docker Compose for N8N was really easy to spin up. I'm doing it on DigitalOcean on a little $6 Linode. You click the Add First Step in your workflow, and you select On Webhook Call. And once you get into there, it gives you the webhook. So I spun this up at n8n.jackdaniel.com. There's the webhook. Again, go ahead and try and use that. Please hit my server up. No, it won't work for you. so now I can take that webhook, go back to the automation, and instead of using ticket, I'm going to use webhook, and I'm going to paste that destination URL in there. Who's not familiar with webhooks? Everybody understand the concept, right? So policy is going to fail. Fleet server, your fleet server is going to reach out to that webhook and pass it a chunk of data. And then we can preview that payload and see that we're going to get the same similar payload as we got for Zendesk. So now we need to build out our workflow here. So again, we have the possibility of a policy failing with multiple devices. So we're going to get a chunk of JSON back that has multiple devices, and I need to do something with that. So the first action I want to take is split out those items. So it's a matter of finding, split out those items, drag that over, and when we get into there, you're going to see on the left-hand side, it's still early for me too. On the left-hand side is an example of the JSON data that you're going to get. So you're going to get things like the policy, the name of the policy, the query that was run, a description. That's that description that we put in the policy back then. And then also the resolution in there. But then we're going to get a host field, and in that is going to have the host ID, display name, and URL. For that. So I'm going to pick the split out operation, and the field that I want to split out is going to be the host field. So I think the cursor won't work for me, maybe. It's not going to work. There it is. So hosts right there is what we're going to split out. So what this allows me to do is now I can access all of this data, but I can take action on each individual entry in the hosts here. I said that. Pick the host field. So the next thing that we want to do is drag the Zendesk module in. And when you do that, again, we can see all of the data over here. So we can see all of our JSON items, and this is coming out of the item list module that we just created. And now we can say in the Zendesk account that we've set up, we want to create a ticket, and then we can actually put the body of the ticket right in here. So the body of the ticket here, for a little bit of ease, instead of making you look at tiny little screenshots, I just copied and pasted it in here. So we can say, I want the policy name, I want the policy description, I want the policy resolution, but then I'm going to go look at the host display name, the host URL, and then as a bonus feature, I get a timestamp out of this, so I'm going to add the timestamp to this. And then I'm missing the screenshot of what the Zendesk ticket looks like. I promise you, it looks pretty basic, like a Zendesk ticket for that. But you could do the same thing to send an email, in the body of an email, a Slack ping, what have you. So with this, we can extend this even further. We have Fleet going to N8N into Zendesk. We can use the API to go and look up additional information. So maybe we want to know more about the configuration of the host that we just created a ticket on, so you don't have to jump all the way into Fleet or OS Query to find out more information about that. So you can actually use N8N to go and make another API call to go get more information about that endpoint and throw that in the ticket. Make your life a little bit easier. The other thing we can do is see if the policy's cleared. And as much as I wanted to give you guys examples of all of this, my job got in my way. I couldn't get all of these API calls put together. But my plan here is to actually, this will be a blog post here in a couple of weeks, and I will have all of these details so that you can literally copy and paste them, and you don't have to actually play with the API at all. You can literally just copy it in and get this to work. So I promise you that's coming. It's free as in beer for you. But we have the capability to take further actions on this. So we can be creative. we can go and look at that policy again, see if it's cleared. Maybe we can automatically close the ticket. I personally hate automatically closing tickets because I feel like we can open a ticket in the morning, close a ticket in the afternoon. We didn't do anything, but that cycle can go on for 30 days, and maybe nobody catches it. I mean, it helps your ticket counts like crazy, right? And your close rate's amazing, but you're actually just not actually accomplishing anything. You probably want to go find out why that's, and it's probably because you have a user that's hovering right at 100 gigs, and they empty the trash at the end of the day, and it clears that policy and closes the ticket. We won. No. The other options here, maybe you're going to call off a configuration manager. So I personally use Monkey. So I might I manage my Monkey repo through a GitHub instance. So I may make a call to GitHub to move that machine into a manifest that has a couple of tools in place that is going to go automatically clean up the trash, or automatically reboot the user, or whatever the case may be. So maybe you can accomplish a few things through an automation tool. And again, N8N is just an example. You can do this with any of these automation tools because you have the capability with APIs and with webhooks to set this in place. And while you won't have a webhook to really take action here, what you can do is use something like something that runs every hour. So they have, each one calls it something different, but basically like a cron that you can say, the thing that kicks off this action is every hour, go check for all the machines that have a failing policy and go do these things that are failing this policy, go do these things, and potentially automate clearing the tickets that way. So if you wanted to test this, you could add a policy for unencrypted SSH keys. It's one that's built in. So go ahead and enable this policy. This is an easy way to test it, unless you want to set your the hard drive to be too full at 900 gigs and have a 500 gig hard drive or something like that. So creating an unencrypted SSH key is very easy. SSH keygen -t RSA. We'll make it huge with the 496 bit encryption on it, and -f of please don't do this. Just don't do this. It's an example. And then when you refresh your host details, so hitting the refresh on the host details is going to reach back out, have OS query run on the machine, and report that data back to me. That at that point is going to tell me, hey, you're failing this policy. You have unencrypted SSH keys, and that should fire off this process for us and create a ticket in Zendesk and email everybody. And I wanted a screenshot from the office when he had, I don't remember what he called it, but it sent a message to everything, and the fax machine went off and everything. Woof, that's right, that's what it was. Basically, that's what you're going to do to yourself if you use my setup. Don't do that. And then if you do this, please delete the unencrypted SSH key. Jeez. But anyway, all of that said, Fleet has the REST API. It's fully published in Postman with lots of detail and examples there. Tines, we've been working with Tines, and they have lots of, Tines is another security-oriented automation platform. They have a lot of templates out there already built. I'm working with the N8N folks to duplicate this in N8N. And if there's other automation platforms that you're using that you would like to see this, please let me know. Reach out to me either in Slack, find me at the table, because I would like to extend this. I want Fleet to be accessible in whatever platform that you're using for that. So again, Fleet's a tool that you can use to go spelunking for threats. Again, remember that this is a snapshot, and you want to send events to your centralized SIM for any history or anything like that. So as an example of threat hunting, You can use scheduled queries for things that don't change, like looking at who's in the sudoers table. And then we have some examples of doing this for threat hunting, if that's of interest to you. We have a couple of blog posts out there, mapping fleet and OS query for the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and also a blog post on discovering Geekon using fleet. It's out there. With that, I want to thank you guys and gals for coming today. Fleet preview, again, on your device can have you up and running. Fleetdm.com/get started will get you into our sandbox environment. That will not have MDM on that. And if you're so kind as to give me a 5-star review on my Uber driving today, I would greatly appreciate it. With that, I'm going to open it up to the room. We have about 20 minutes for Q&A. And I don't want to repeat questions, so I'm going to give that to you.
The question I had is, you were mentioning the tickets, the different ticket systems. Do you have support for pushing into like ServiceNow?
Yeah, so the beauty of this is, while Fleet does not have support for ServiceNow directly, you can use an automation tool that does have support. You're just going to use that webhook. And if you don't mind having a single ticket with multiple devices in it, your setup is literally like, here's the webhook, here's ServiceNow, create a ticket. Done, right?
Yeah.
That's we decided not to keep building those out, just because every time you do that, somebody wants you want to tweak it some way. Oh, I don't like the way you present the data this way. Well, you can do whatever you want with an automation tool. So our priority became the webhook. And so you have the webhook and use an automation tool, and you can get it. I guess my big point and takeaway here is that automation can be had for little to nothing, right? $6 on, or with tax or whatever, on DigitalOcean get you a full automation tool. I don't remember what some of the other ones are, if this then that or what have you, but they range anywhere from $2 to $20, depending on how many times you're calling them, and you can get a lot done for that. Other questions? Who's going to go home and or go to their hotel room or go out to wherever and try Fleet? No? All right, yay! So I'm not here to sell you Fleet like the sold product. It is open source. 90% of the features there are free in the open source version of it. You can get it up and running on not a $6 DigitalOcean droplet, but probably the $20 to $25 DigitalOcean droplet, mostly because that heartbeat that we're sending from the endpoint is a mini DDoS attack on yourself. But the thing about that heartbeat is that's how you're able to do the live queries. That heartbeat every 10 seconds or so is what says this computer is online and is available. Oh, you have a live query for me to run. I'll go ahead and do that. Yeah, toss that over there.
So I'm looking at your other automations. I think this came out recently, the vulnerability scans.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't tapped into that yet. We're Fleet customers right now. I'm just curious how often your vulnerability database is updated, like how new and how fresh those are.
So right now we're running on 3-week sprints for that. So generally we have a new release every 3 weeks. As far as anything in that, those will be noted in the change log for that. If it's something critical and you're a customer, we're probably going to reach directly out to you with that and probably inject it directly into your instance. But so far, we haven't had a lot of 0 days that are there at that point. And a lot of that stuff's also going to be caught by Apple and XProtect early on the Mac side of things. Windows, we're still, there's a lot of CIS benchmarks for Windows. Anybody play in the Windows space? So I apologize, I'm sorry. There's 400 plus CIS benchmarks on the Windows side, and we're still playing catch up for on the Windows side. So there's still more to come, definitely on the Windows side. But if it's something critical, we're trying to get that. We'll get it out to you within the sprint.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we use Tenable for vuln scanning right now, and if we can use Fleet instead, because we already have it installed in systems,
right,
that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing right now is that we don't have a team doing any investigation because we're not CrowdStrike, right? We're a tool that you can use in conjunction with something like that, but we're dependent on the community for alerting us and adding that in as well. Other questions? All right. If you are interested in the paid version of Fleet, Tom's sitting over here wearing a cool MDM Work from Anywhere shirt from Fleet. We have that similar design back at the table. It only costs you your personal information, including bank account number. No, I'm kidding. We just have a little form to fill out. But we do have lots of T-shirts left, and in normal people sizes, extra large, 2XL, none of the small, medium stuff. Sorry, I'm a big guy. At the table, please feel free to stop by and grab a shirt, grab pens, grab stickers. I don't want to take any of that stuff home.
Fair enough.
All right. Thank you all. Is this what you guys hoped it would be? Okay. Glad.
Talk about your sourdough. Yeah.
So the sourdough, my starter is called the Yeasty Boys. Yes. They have been highly abused over the years, so they're the most stout yeast that I have found because they get ignored for months at a time and then refed, and they come back alive. So basically, the strongest will survive, I guess. I make anything from, well, we do sourdough pizza generally every Sunday because Sunday is pizza night. And then, because I have to feed the starter when I'm home. And then I haven't done baguettes, but I'll do some birria, which is a Central American style bread. I like it because it uses you use light beer and lime and salt in it when you're proofing the dough, and so it's a really nice light crispy crust for that. So, and then loaf bread and stuff like that. That's the important part, is the sourdough. Next year we'll do a sourdough class and then a coffee class. Thanks. Workshop.